In an ideal world, developers would be very passionate about the games that they're delivering. Publishers, studio owners, they'd be focused on innovation, quality control, releasing the best possible product for their customers. Unfortunately, we live in the real world, and games aren't always released as art. It's about the money. It's about monetization practices, games as a service, loot boxes, at the very least, ripping off their customers, asking for the most money for the least amount of content as is possible. Now, sometimes gamers do nothing about it. They just keep buying, they keep parting with their money, but occasionally they do push back. They make their voices heard. They tell the devs no. And that is what has happened in the case of Creative Assembly. If you're not familiar with Creative Assembly, they're the dev behind the Total War series. They've been going for 20 plus years, and the Total War series used to be really, really good. It was in the early 2000s that I was introduced to it. I had a neighbor who was really into those games, introduced me to them, and they were a lot of fun. It was obvious that a lot of passion back in those days had been put into these titles, but that doesn't really seem like the case anymore. If you're not into strategy series like Total War, you might know Creative Assembly from Alien Isolation. It's one of the best horror games I've ever played. Really, really immersive. The alien, the AI was really fantastic. I think it innovated a lot. Probably inspired, say, Mr. X from the Resident Evil series. So that game was genuinely quality. But it seems to have been downhill since then for Creative Assembly, and what seems to have happened is over the years they've had a template for Total War that they've developed in their engine, and rather than creating a new Total War game from scratch each time, they're essentially building on from the last one. It's almost like releasing an expansion, which would be fine, but they are charging full price for these games. They're charging AAA prices, and they're giving customers less and less content over time, less and less quality. They're not addressing feedback. They're basically saying, oh, we can't do anything because we have to fix up our engine. It might even be like Bethesda. People have started to say, hey, the creation engine, it's good and all, great for mods. However, we don't want to have 50,000 loading screens every hour of our playthrough. So it may be something like that. Maybe someone more technical could really drill down to it. But it seems like the short of it is they are charging full prices for really shoddy releases that aren't really full games full of great new content. Now, fans of Creative Assembly, fans of these games, they have had enough. They have started to make their voices heard. They're voting with their wallets because they're not spending as much on this series anymore. Total War Pharaoh, the latest game released, it's doing really bad numbers on Steam. Player numbers are pathetic and reviews are mixed. And the community's also making their voices heard via reviews, via discussions on message boards. Creative Assembly aren't happy. They've started to delete these reviews. They've been deleting comments. And if they just deleted them and they said, we don't want anyone discussing this negatively, it might affect scales, sorry, that's just how it is, I might actually respect them a little bit. But they haven't done that. Instead, they're deleting them and patronisingly explaining why. So, CA Evangelist, I assume he's a community manager or something. This person used to work at EA and was responsible for some embarrassing moments. There was a time where it might have been Battlefield 2042, was it? Battlefield 5, where fans of that series were really pissed. They were saying, hey, you've delivered a game that is basically broken. Please fix it. We want to actually be able to play a working product. And this community manager responded with, those are brutal expectations, guys. I don't know if we can do that. I mean, can we at least meet halfway? Maybe if we deliver a product that boots to the menu screen, maybe you can sort of get into the game. Would that be enough? Asking us to actually deliver on promised features, that's a brutal expectation. That was one of this person's great moments in the industry. They now obviously work at Creative Assembly and have delivered a response for why Steam reviews are getting deleted. And some of this is plain embarrassing. It talks about criticism is and will always be welcome. But, and then there's a whole bunch of excuses as to why it's okay to actually remove these reviews, remove important discussion about why this product is not what was promised. Basically, people warning other members of the community not to waste their money, that is a problem. And the reasons why, focusing entirely on the criticism without offering constructive solutions. Why aren't you able to criticize without offering a solution? You're the developer. You're meant to have the solution. As a customer, I can criticize what I've paid money for, and I can say, this is no good, do better next time. I can say that. I don't have to say, hey, get your engineers onto this. If you had have introduced this feature here and there, you could have done a better job. How about you do that? Then I'll be happy as the paying customer. Why does anyone have to do that? You don't need to be coming up with solutions to criticize. It just seems like in gaming, there's all these little special rules that are had because apparently developers have such a hard time of it and we should be understanding. I'm sorry, I can be empathetic in terms of developers maybe being overworked, if there's unrealistic expectations, but I'm not going to give them special treatment. If I buy a TV and it sucks, it's not what was promised, I'm going to complain to Sony, to Samsung, whatever the TV company is. I'm not going to have a second thought about it. I'm not going to be thinking about all those engineers, the person in the factory who put that together, probably child labour, let's be honest, I don't know. But that aside, when it comes to game dev, it just seems like they expect us to really understand the goings-on behind the scenes and just forget about all of our grievances. To go, I know that we've wasted $100 on the game, but hey, there's all these overall big societal problems that we should be worried about. So therefore, we should not be concerned about our money being wasted on a game. Let's forget about it all. They start to talk about clear attempts to derail constructive conversation. Now, let's be honest, I would imagine in Creative Assembly's eyes, constructive conversation is talking about buying the game. It's constructive to say, hey, you should get the special edition instead of the standard edition. The special one is a great deal. That would be what they would consider constructive, I am guessing. I think anything negative, that will count as not constructive, because who's making the rules here? Who decides what is constructive and isn't? I imagine it's this person, the community manager, and their team. Responses aimed at undermining other players' enjoyment of the game. Well, that is exactly what I'm saying. If you talk about the game in a negative light, that's not going to be constructive. Therefore, your comment is getting deleted. It's as simple as that. Doomsaying, that's another rule. It's another word that doesn't really mean anything. It's just a word for the developers to put their own spin on it. They've built the dictionary for this because it's their forum, and they can say, hey, you said something negative about the game, your comment's gone, get out of here. Calls for new Total War titles, aka people are saying, can you make a good game again? Can you stop releasing rubbish expansions that are marketed as full titles, full releases that you're charging a full price for? If anyone asks for something else, well, you're getting out of here as well. Now, being angry, to their credit, being angry or being critical in your post is perfectly fine. So if you aggressively tell someone to buy the game, if you say, what do you mean that you only bought one? Have you looked at the Steam sale? There's 6 games on sale right now. Buy all of them. If you're aggressive in that manner, that's okay. Being angry is fine. But anything else, and you are gone. And understandably, there's a lot of comments here pushing back, and people are not happy at all, because this is condescending. This is giving an excuse to something that everyone knows the truth of. You've deleted comments, you've deleted Steam reviews because it's affecting sales. Pretending there's some higher power, some higher reason for doing this is total bullshit. And it doesn't matter how you PR spin it, everyone knows it. And the proof of that, if we go to another message board, we can see what's starting to happen. For instance, on the Reddit here, you've got the typical Reddit mod, who is either an employee of Creative Assembly or an absolute suck-up. It's typical Reddit mod behavior. PSA, if you post CA employees' personal information or otherwise try and dox direct harassment at specific people, you will be permabanned. Hello all. Just need to put this out there. There is no scenario where posting pictures or identifying information of Creative Assembly employees here is necessary. You will catch a perma-ban for doing this goofy shit. If anyone does see someone doing it, report it, and we will get on it, rat them out. I realise that shit has hit the fan and all, but let's not witch hunt or harass people over some video game, okay? Okay, good talk. This always happens. It just seems to be very predictable these days. that there'll be a really big controversy where a developer, some sort of corporation, has done something absolutely scummy, and then suddenly evidence will come out that a couple of unhinged people personally attacked a couple of low-end developers or low-end employees who probably had nothing to do with the issues at hand, but someone's made a death threat or something horrible. Now, obviously that's not good. However, it just seems to be such a coincidence that, oh, the developer is in hot water, and now we need to stop the criticism, guys, because one or two people got a death threat. Now, let's be honest, there are insane people on the internet, and I don't care what company it is, there's always going to be someone going online and harassing someone or making some sort of horrible threat. That is just going to happen. It is no special circumstance here. And criticism should not stop because of one or two insane people, insane individuals. This is an excuse from the developers to try and shut down the criticism. And again, their motivation is not well-being of the devs, it is their bottom line. People are getting the message out that the game's a waste of money, people are refunding the game, people aren't buying it, and that is the only true motivation. They don't care about their staff, they absolutely don't. They're probably overworked. I've heard stories about Creative Assembly employees absolutely struggling to do their job properly because the higher-ups will not invest in their engines and actually allow them to build a constructive foundation, to build a Total War game from. Their hands are tied behind their back, essentially. That is what's going on here. This is just another scummy way to try and shut down the criticism. This means nothing. Don't harass people, but do not let this stop you from voicing your opinion about the game. Don't do it, because this developer is pathetic. All is not lost, though, because Creative Assembly have seen the error of their ways. They have apologised. And the same community manager, he's responding to this comment, where this person says, "Hello, community manager, could you please react to the right to discuss is a privilege?" And that's a really key point, because if we go to the bottom of that original post from Creative Assembly where they shut down the criticism, something that they actually said is the right to discuss is a privilege. It is not an entitlement you earn by playing the game. The right to discuss is a privilege. That is gold. That is absolutely gold, and people have picked up on it. And the community manager, who's been drilled on this and said, "What the fuck are you talking about? The right to discuss is a privilege? Where do you live? Do you live in China?" And the rest of this comment, so Merlin has said, "Community manager, could you please react to the right to discuss is a privilege, because that's insane." That seems like a supremely arrogant stance. "We would like to know more about privilege of discussing games we bought from you." And the community manager says, "On reflection, it does." What he really means is, after my bosses said, "You're an idiot, why did you say that? You've made us look even worse." Now he's reflecting on it. Now he's thinking, "Ooh, maybe I made a mistake." It's a pathetic response. Anyone who had that mindset, the right to discuss it is a privilege, this person shouldn't be there. This person seems to have just made errors in multiple PR positions, and I don't want to call for someone's head, but they seem to be quite incompetent. The team at Creative Assembly seem to be incompetent. I wish we could have just captured that lightning in a bottle. I wish we could just go back to Alien Isolation era. That seems to be the peak for them, at least in that era. Maybe the earlier Total War games, people probably prefer them, but I loved Alien Isolation. It's one of my favourite titles. So it is so sad to see that they've gone from those highs to these absolute lows, deleting Steam reviews, which I personally think shouldn't be allowed. I don't care what anyone's reason for a negative review is. I don't care if it's some political thing. I don't care if it's related to the developers ripping customers off with other titles. It might not be related to that specific game, but people want to make their voices heard because people just don't have a great way to get their voices out there. Everything just seems to be controlled by larger corporations. We see it with, say, YouTube deleting the dislike button, which was, again, because bigger companies didn't like that users were able to make their voices heard. So I don't want to see that go away. Steam is a safe haven where people can still go on there, leave an honest review, and the user can go on there and base their opinion to buy the game on what everyday people are saying. They don't have to trust IGN or GameSpot or someone else who are probably paid by the bigger publishers, or at least incentivize them to give them good ratings. They don't have to do that. They can listen to Steam reviews. They can see if it's mixed, if it's negative, and they can truly make an informed decision. So Creative Assembly, they're pathetic. I don't think I'll be buying anything from them anytime soon. It seems like others share that opinion, and they can do damage control, but I think the damage is done. Hyenas, that disgraceful live service that didn't even come out despite being almost nearly finished. No one cares about that. No one seems to care about the latest Total War. Hopefully other developers can fill their shoes, because people have had enough, and I don't see this changing while these people are there. And the overall reception seems to be some heads need to roll. Some people need to be out on their ass, because if you're doing a job, you should at least be doing a competent job, and Creative Assembly are certainly not doing that. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.